Hey guys, welcome back. It's Mike with Kiss Dog Training, and today we're going to tackle a question. Have you ever said to yourself, I know my dog knows this and they're just choosing not to do it? Is it a case where you think they don't listen, they're being stubborn, or is it the fact that maybe they're just a little overwhelmed? And the real sneaky part about this thing is if the dog's overwhelmed, I'll bet money that the owner is overwhelmed too. Okay, guys, it's really time to kind of just break this down into most people just assume dogs come pre programmed and they're just going to do what you say because you're saying it. We kind of, let's say, assume that dogs can speak English. Well, you can't speak dog, he can't speak English, and you're both now frustrated because there's nothing going on. But it really comes down to look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself a simple question. Did you teach your dog to do what you're asking? And then if the answer is yes, you have to ask a secondary question. Have I taught the dog to do that particular thing in this exact environment? Unfortunately, this idea here creates a huge set of unrealistic unrealistic expectations for both the dog and the human. And it really has a lot to do with that overwhelmed feeling that people have. They might try really hard, but it might just be trying the wrong way. It's one of the greatest myths in dog training that if my dog can do a sit, they ought to be able to do a sit everywhere. But I guess that would also say, well, if a mechanic can air up the tires on my Corvette, then they're not going to have any problems airing up the tires on a 747 jet airliner. They're both tires. Why doesn't it work? It's really simple. Environment has a lot to do with it, and it's that nasty D word in dog training of distraction. That if a dog can do something in the living room, that's fine. But can they do it on the back porch where they're looking at squirrels and the wind's blowing and there's good smells everywhere and the bunny just pooped in the corner over there? It's a totally different thing. And if the you've got the house in the backyard, well, what about the front yard? Well, the dog never gets to go out in the front yard for most part. And if they are, it's just to go out to the car. How often have you really ever practiced just sitting out in the front yard and getting your dog to pay attention to you and listen to you? Each one of these is a new layer of distraction. And the ironic part is we haven't even talked about, okay, now let's put a leash on the dog and let's go for a walk. Well, that's a totally different environment. And then what happens if you live in a really urban setting, or let's say a suburban setting with lots of dogs? Well, we add that layer of city noises or dogs being present all the time, and then we expect the dog to be able to perform at the exact same reliability as they do inside the four walls of our house. In a sense, it's just not how we work. It's not how dogs work. We automatically assume that familiar and trained are the same thing. So they're not, but there's ways to get around it. The funny part is a lot of things we're talking about right now are things that I talk about all the time. It's the curse of the living room dog. And it is that a dog can do wonderful things inside the four walls of your house because that's where you do the lion's share of your work. Okay. The entire idea that we're talking about is based off a blog post that I did a couple of weeks ago. And now we're going to be sharing it via the podcast and the YouTube channel and everything else. But it's all about what does overwhelmed look like. Okay. For the dog, I think it's really simple things. It's acting stubborn. giving you a blank stare, walking away from a training session. Yawns would be something I would be looking for. Constantly scratching. These are all diffusement behaviors of I don't know what the hell you want, but you keep hammering me with the same word. It's almost like somebody who speaks a foreign language. We assume if I just talk slower and louder, you'll eventually understand, right? Well, it doesn't work that way again. Okay? So these are some of the things that you start to notice when you realize the dog's overwhelmed. Okay? And I think it's important also, let's flip the script. What's it look like when a human is overwhelmed? Well, I think it's more situational. Most people will tell me, I've had dogs my entire life and we've never had this kind of problem. And I say, well, were you married the last time you had dogs? No, I was single. Okay, did you have kids last time, you had dogs? No, I was single. I spent all my time with the dogs. And were you a manager that was working 60 hours a week? No, I just had a part-time job. I was in college. The dog was great. Well, as you hear me talk about this, a lot of times that forever dog that we always talk about was a dog that we could spend a ton of time with. They were your wingman. Okay, it was that dog was with you 24/7, and you guys had this secret understanding and language between the two of you, and everything just went right. But roll the script forward 10 years, and you're married. You got 3 kids. They're all in activities. They're all in school. They got to do homework. You got to get them out of the house and go to daycare. You got to get them from daycare back home. You got to feed them. And this doesn't even include the stress from work and relationships and everything else that's going on. And then you wonder, well, why is it becoming so hard to deal with the dog? Take a step back. Look in the mirror. The answer's staring you right in the face. I think it's one important word, and we'll talk about that one next. So I kind of lied to you. I said the next thing we're going to talk about is how to get it kind of going. Well, I wanted to go into the routines, but when I kind of checked my notes, there's something you got to do before you look at the routines, and that's we got to kind of do a reset, okay? Number one, let's look at our expectations. Now that you've listened to the first part of this little conversation, I'm hoping you're starting to feel like, well, wait a minute, maybe my expectations are a little bit crazy. So, first thing we can do, let's back off the expectations a little bit. Don't expect so much out of the dog. I think number two, we're going to talk about rebuilding the routines, but usually when the temperature is high in the house, the frustration level's high in the house, one of the big things I'm always going to recommend is doggy daycare. Okay, you're already working, you got kids, you got everything else going on, or whatever is the chaos in your life, and everybody's got some. If we could temporarily, short term, and the dog is capable of doggy daycare, we're not talking with reactivity, aggression, some of the other things, but if we could pull off a Monday, Wednesday, Friday for a couple of months, then you sure as know that Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays are going to be way easier. And by the time the dog is ramping up on a Sunday, you're taking him back on Monday. So it helps in the reset process to wear the dog out and give you both a little bit of a break. Okay. Now, the next thing we got to look at is routine. Okay. The big one I always talk about, how are you feeding the dog now? If you just throw a bowl down on the ground with food in it and you're running around trying to get the kids ready for school and you're doing all this other stuff, and then you rush out of the house and you come back 8 or 10 hours later, well, we need to change that routine around, okay? Let's say you are free feeding. I think you're wasting one of the greatest resources that God ever gave us for training a dog, which is food. And if I could, let's say, part of the routine, I'm sure, in everybody's house is either a place command or a crate command or whatever. But let's say we just split the food feedings into 4 times a day. And we're going to do 2 in the crate or at the place. And if you're already having problems with the dog, you should probably rethink crate training just so the dog has a space they know is theirs. We can pair a whole bunch of wonderful things, feeding out of a bowl, Kongs, you name it. But it will give us a redirection space to go, nope, that's wrong, go over here. So crate training is something we're not really going to cover a lot in this talk, but I do think if we separated our hand feeding, which we're going to talk about here in a minute, into 4 parts, I think we could really jumpstart the routine idea. So let's say your morning is chaotic because of your partner and the kids running around the house. So obviously, I'm not going to try to do a hand feeding session during that time because mornings are probably pretty chaotic. But if I had a crate set up, I could come out of the laundry room with a bowl of food, and I'd go, okay, Fido, in the crate. He'd hop in the crate. I'd give him the food bowl. I'd shut the door, and then I could start doing my stuff, with the kids and get everybody all taken care of. We need to come up with another time during the day. Could be in the evening if you work 8 or 10 hours a day. You're going to have to figure this routine out for your life. Okay, it's going to be different for everybody. But after you do the bowl feeding, so that you can make your morning routine a little less frustrating, we have to come up with a time to do a hand feeding. Okay. If you look on our YouTube channel, we have some awesome videos on hand feeding and the games you play to teach sit and down and watch me and not jumping up on me and not pulling on a leash, at least the beginning parts of it. Even go find it and come here. Different skills you're going to need with your dog. Plus, your dog needs that burnout energy of working with you. Plus, it bonds you with the dog. It's wonderful. I would love to convince you that this was my idea. I got this idea from Ian Dunbar. If you're into dog training, look that name up. It's well worth your time. He's got a podcast called iWoofs. But the hand feeding idea comes from the old saying of don't bite the hand that feeds. You need to start that routine again, okay? Then let's say evening TV time. It's crazy. What do I do? Well, I'm going to have 8 or 10 Kongs frozen in the freezer. And I chose to use 80% dog food and 20% low sodium applesauce. Okay? And then I froze them. So now, anytime I need to put the dog back in the crate so I can give the kids a bath, get them in bed, fix dinner, get everybody to the dinner table, I can have the dog in the crate with a Kong, positively associating things, and helping you not freak out because the dog's got somebody's shoe or somebody's homework or somebody's backpack. And now we've managed the system. You're working a routine. And then maybe we kind of have to look at the total amount of food we're feeding the dog, but maybe there's a little bit more that we could feed in a bowl later on in the evening, and the dog could be in the crate. Or you could do another hand feeding schedule. So this is not so much a routine that has to be the same for every person. That recipe is going to be different depending on your lifestyle, your experience, your situation. But you sit down as a family and you go, okay, this is the way we're going to do it. But we go from, if we do it right, this overwhelmed, crazy life to now we do this, then we do this, then we do this, then we do this, and the routine starts. Now the dog starts expecting the routine and starts offering behaviors to get to the routine. Okay? So at the very beginning, you're on the tornado trip going in the wrong direction. All we're doing is trying to slow the tornado down so we can get it going in the right direction, going where you want to go. Okay? So keep in mind, routine. The easiest one to do is hand feeding. We'll talk about a couple of other routines that we might be able to institute, but admit that you're overwhelmed, admit that the dog is overwhelmed and nobody's communicating, and that hand feeding becomes the first part of the new routine. Okay, let's talk about another routine we could change. I'm not even sure I'd call this a routine, but I'm going to just because this is the theme of the talk. Let's talk about why punishment doesn't necessarily work. Now, I do think punishment is kind of weird in dog training because we've made it a bad word. By definition, I have a degree in psychology. Punishment is anything that decreases the frequency of a behavior. Now, choke chains, prong collars, shock collars, aversive techniques, I don't consider those so much punishment as borderline abuse. That's not to say that you're not going to have some form of consequence or punishment when you're creating your dog training routine. But to me, if I teach my dog to go in and out of the crate on command, and that's a reliable command, when the dog is doing something wrong, I can simply say, go to your room. And I can get them to go to their room, shut the door. I wait about 10 or 20 seconds tops. Because come on, let's face it, dogs have the attention span of a brick. Okay? If you were to leave the dog in the crate for 20 minutes because they were in trouble, they would never learn the cause and effect of this behavior equaled me going to the crate. All it would be is isolation. Okay? Wouldn't be teaching the dog anything. But if we take the time during hand feeding to teach in and out of the crate, now I have a redirection cue. I could tell the dog to go to the crate. And if you were super fancy, before I worked with the crate, maybe I would start on a leave it command, which means leave that alone and come back to me. So if I see the dog chewing on little Johnny's shoe, I can go, hey, leave it. And the dog knows, oh, that means come back to mom. I'll get a reward. Then mom and dad can pick up the shoe and put it away. Because really and truly, if you've got small kids and you're overwhelmed and life and work is already beating you up, you're not going to think to put things away. But really, should a dog understand that is the inappropriate thing to chew unless they've been taught that? Okay? And redirection is going to be that first part of teaching. So we need to have a spot. In my world, what I like to do is more, I'm going to do 3 strikes and you're out. So if you're doing something inappropriate, getting on the furniture, jumping up on people, chewing on the wrong thing, I'm going to use leave it command to redirect you. I'm going to bring you back over here and I'm going to say, leave it, come here, good dog. Okay, go play. And I'm going to let the dog go back. If they choose to go back to whatever they were doing before, I'm going to redirect again. And it's kind of like, don't do that, come here. And I'm rewarding the comeback because the punishment's really losing access to what they were doing. On that third time, when they screw up, I'm going to go, nope, strike 3, go to your crate. And I'm still giving the dog a cookie for going to the crate because you did what I asked. The punishment's losing access to what you were doing, not actually going to the crate. That's what you asked the dog to do, so that needs to be rewarded. A good example that I can use that some people, it helps kind of clarify, is if you do have kids and they're in the elementary school and the school uses what's called a safe seat. If you act like a dingleberry in class, the teacher might very well go, go over there, sit at that desk. And they have to go sit away from the class for a few minutes. Now, in most cases, people would say the punishment's going to the desk. This is where I want you to kind of look at it different. The punishment is losing access to the class because usually they were being a class clown, not paying attention, doing something like that. The desk is the management device, the crate. Okay, it's a timeout. Go over there. But you can't leave the kid over there for 4 hours because then they wouldn't learn cause and effect. So for ideas like this to work, we need to go to your crate, 10 seconds, let them out. Okay, what's the next choice going to be? And they might run over and do it again. If you do it 4, 5, 6 times in a row, really quick, with rewards, kind voice, you don't have to yell and scream, you're not dragging the dog to the crate, you're just teaching, hey, if you do this, this happens. You do this, this happens. And eventually the dog comes out of the crate and goes, not doing that again. What are we doing now? And now you have created a more valuable behavior, which is going to the crate on command with a reward. And the dog is like, I don't want to do that anymore. So it's redirection. So where the hand feeding is going to be where we teach our skills and put the tools in the toolkit, I might fine-tune some of this routine talk with maybe a quick timeout to the crate. It's something else you can do to build a routine so that when you get frustrated, you can go, okay, I do this. I don't go strict into aversive punishments, yelling and screaming. Let's face it, when we get frustrated and angry, most people will hit a wall and they'll go dark side, okay? But if you have a good routine, and you know what the next step is, and you know what to do, you're going to be way more apt to think, next step, what do we do? Same thing we do with our kids. Think about that for a minute. Okay, so what are the takeaways from this? I mean, I kind of bounced around all over the place. I would recommend going back and checking out the blog post. We'll have a YouTube video out that you're watching, obviously, right now. It'll eventually end up on the podcast. Who knows where it'll end up next. But we try to spread it out among all these platforms so that people can kind of think about it. But what do we take away from it? Okay, number one, your dog's not broken. Your dog's normal. Number two, you're not broken. You're normal. Okay? Number three, your kids are not broken. They're normal. But everybody gets distracted. Everybody gets tired. Everybody loses consistency. Nobody trains as frequently as they should. So, what we have to do is sit down as a family, a piece of paper and a pen, and come up with a quick routine. Just do 5 things. You know, if you built a routine around feeding time where it was either going to be in the bowl, in the crate, so we're making a good association there, using Kongs when I need a little longer visit of management, hand feeding so I can teach skills, and like I said earlier, hunt around on YouTube and you're going to find there's 2 different playlists for hand feeding. One that I send to my clients so they have something to review after I've left, and another one that's just a whole bunch of topics on hand feeding. But that's how you put the tools in the toolkit. That's the teaching. The routines help make the teaching consistent. And then, like I talked about at the beginning, don't stop in the living room. You got to get out of the living room. You got to go to the backyard. It's the next least distracting but more location. And then the front yard and the driveway is the next one you go to. Then we'll start building a walk. I live in Kansas City. It's really cold right now, so people don't want to go where. But hey, Home Depot, Lowe's, Bass Pro, Shields, most hardware stores, a lot of breweries here in town that are dog friendly, where I can start getting my dog out in public. Now, does that mean I'm going to take my dog who is out of control and reactive to the brewery? No. You're going to have to do some base work first. I wouldn't even take a out of control, non-routine having dog to a retail establishment. But I might start with something really simple of just going in, hugging the side wall, hugging the back wall, hugging the other side wall, walking out the exit, and doing that 3 times a week for a couple of weeks till they're normalized or desensitized to it. That's all this is just adding different layers of distraction. Okay? So, nobody's broke. Feeling overwhelmed is fixable. It's just a question of, do you have the gumption to put it in park? Stop going forward, quit trying to go backwards, just park, and come up with what's the next step. And this is where I think hiring a good positive reinforcement trainer to help come into your house, look at the logistics, see where you're at with the dog, what's the next step. A lot of times all you need is an accountability buddy. If you know I'm coming back every 2 weeks, you're going to do the work. So maybe that's all you need. Maybe all you needed was to listen to this. Some of you are just going to read the blog and go, I can do that. But everybody's needs are different. But do me a favor. If your dog is quote unquote stubborn, which I would call overwhelmed, then chances are you're overwhelmed too. Slow down, reset, think about it. And if you need help, give me a call. I'll be more than happy to help. It's Mike with Kiss Dog Training. Come back next time and we'll talk about something else. Who knows what it'll be, but hopefully you'll find it useful. Guys, have a great night.